Hello, ELIC 30. This is Michael, and we are in How to Be Human, An Autistic Man's Guide to Life by Jory Fleming. We are continuing in Chapter 9, One Word, Love, and we are on page 170, near the bottom, where LW, Lyric Winnick, asks her next question. How do you define freedom of thought, and why is it so important to you? Jory: I feel like what I'll be able to accomplish in my life will be necessarily limited by the fact that I'm just one individual, but I do have the freedom to decide my internal fate. You, me, each of us has the internal stability to be able to stand against the tide of the world. Maintaining that internal stability to stand against the tide is emblematic of a greater freedom which I feel everybody has. It is what freedom of thought entails, the freedom that nobody can enter your mind, at least not yet. We still don't have that kind of spooky AI, artificial intelligence. Individual thought is a strong, irreversible force. It's one of the few irreversible things, in my opinion. Diversity of thought is also really valuable as an aggregate. Every person agreeing with every other person, that would be conformity. And conformity is usually not resilient, whereas diversity is more resilient. We're never going to agree, but we can find common meaning. You can look at someone and say, oh, that person has those qualities and finds these things important, and their journey through life will never occur exactly that way again. You have a set of tools available to you which are uniquely yours and are empowered because each person has unique disabilities and abilities. That should be highly valued. If you have your tools and your thoughts, then you have what's necessary to make the change that you want to see happen in the world, or at least to try. No guarantee you're going to succeed, but you can at least go for it. LW: You are very committed to changing the world. How can one individual or a few individuals working together achieve that kind of change? Where does it start? Jory: In college, I helped lead a class where I was basically mentoring people on how to be mentors. It was creating a chain reaction of mentorship. I was working with a co-instructor to help students work through problems, where we got to lead by example. Leading by example is something that I think is extremely valuable and very underutilized. You can look at some leaders and realize not everyone should lead by example. I see it with emotions. People respond to emotions with their own emotions, or they respond to an ethical deficit base by not being ethical themselves. That's incredible to me. We live in a world where there are power structures that people create which hold other people down. If you do nothing, then you are maintaining the status quo, right? If bad things are happening, why wouldn't you respond? If you think lack of kindness is a problem, why would you try to tackle that problem with your own lack of kindness? From your internal space, decide how you want to correct the imbalances you see in the world. And having no response is also a response. That's a choice as well. Problems are not solved by doing the same thing over and over again, or by trying to solve one problem by applying another problem. Instead, you have to identify the problem and develop a solution. It also doesn't have to always be your solution, right? It can be shared knowledge, a shared creation. But to do that, you have to put in a lot of hard work. You have to have a lot of communication. You have to build up everybody so that they can freely participate. One thing that I think is fortunate about autism, for me, is that I'm so amorphous. I can relate to where everyone's coming from in a way that other people who are latched on to ideologies or latched on to culture or latched on to their identities can't. They can't quite experience that. It's almost like being so amorphous has resulted in my being empathetic, not in an emotional sense, but more in an intellectual sense. Jory talks about the problem of anger in how we address our problems as individuals and as a society, and also in our public discourse. Jory: I can name facts that happened over 6 months ago, and people draw a blank. But I don't blank on such things. I can't ignore them. And I don't really know how to translate that to other people. But I do wish people would take a moment and take in things happening around them. It's a mindset you have to practice all the time. Like, did you smell that flower? Or like, why are you walking so fast? Or why are you arguing with this person about a totally meaningless topic? Or why is this weird negative emotion building up inside of you out of nowhere because of spilled milk? It's crazy. Okay, let's pause for a moment. He just mentioned spilled milk. He's not talking about an accident that someone has in the kitchen. Maybe you've heard the expression, there's no use crying over spilled milk. Okay, so spilled milk is a metaphor for some small, really insignificant problem. And that's what he's talking about here. Continuing on. I finally deleted Facebook off my phone because there was too much political arguing, just repeating the same points over and over, like an infinite loop, where no one's mind was being changed and no one was adding new or useful facts. It was all people searching for ways to repeat the opinions they already had. Sometimes I look around and think, lots of people are not very good at interacting with other people. They may think that autism is a disability, but at least I'm aware of the fact that I don't interact with people very well. I see so much anger, and I feel like saying, you know what? Y'all are disabled too. You just don't know it because you're all the same. I know that I can't change X problem or issue, and you probably can't change X either, but you can change the next time you want to feel angry. Take a 5-second mental loop and ask yourself why you want to feel angry and who's trying to make you feel angry, and a bunch of other questions that might make you less angry. I know it's really hard for people to do that. I've seen them go through it. It's like it happens so quickly that you don't even have time to ask yourself that one mental question before you're already on to being angry about the next thing. But people need to install something like a circuit breaker to stop this crazy amount of emotion. I need to design an autistic circuit breaker for normal people. LW. One of the selling points for artificial intelligence is the idea that it's not emotion-based. Instead, it's described as being rational and making different calculations. Does that sound to you as being a little like how autism is described, or at least having that same freedom from emotion? Jory. One of the things that I see from an autistic perspective are the dangers inherent to ideology and emotion. But I wouldn't go so far as to say that a completely rational artificial intelligence removing all emotion would be best for people without autism. I actually think it would break people if they weren't controlled by emotion or ideology. I don't think people would be strong enough to deal with that. LW. Why? Jory. If all of a sudden you just take away the strengths that people have, they're left only with their weaknesses. I've had to deal with my weaknesses and build up my strengths, but to take away somebody else's strength just because it's my weakness is not right. Some projections say that 10% to almost 50% of human tasks could be automated in the next 100 years. It will probably have a pretty decent effect, but it also could just change everything. And it's too early to say. But the problem is that the decisions are not being made with enough forethought to other elements, like, ironic for me to say, emotion. Because, yes, it might be more efficient and create more wealth in an economic sense if everything's automated, but if nobody has a job, you need to prepare for that. And many of the jobs that will be created from this are going to be high-paying jobs that need both high skills and high education. And those jobs may not be going to people with disabilities, people with tough backgrounds, or people who have worked in different jobs. People are not very good at dealing with the intersection of technology and the human condition. They say, "Oh, we'll just retrain everybody." It's really insulting to tell someone whose lifestyle was upended by forces far removed from them and very much beyond their control, "Get some counseling and job retraining and you'll be good to go." I don't think anybody would say that for the sake of the I don't think anybody would say that the state of the world now is worse than in the 1700s, for example. But that doesn't mean that we are invincible going forward. LW. How do you see your life going forward? What matters to you? What principles do you hope will guide you? Jory, I don't want to be one of those people that just kind of sits in the back and thinks about things. I love doing that, but I think there are too many of those people. More of the smart people should do less of the thinking, which is kind of paradoxical. But at some point, you have to stop thinking and get moving. You've got to pick something you want to work on and try to do it. There are trees in Oxford that have been here for longer than the U.S. has existed. But you also have all the flowers which are here one day and gone the next. It's a sense of beauty, which is kind of like an individual person, because people are also here one day and gone the next. People always think they're going to live longer than they do, but that's no guarantee for anybody in particular. Nature is a good example of thinking about that in a positive context. I'm not going to be the stately tree that's going to be around forever, but maybe some of the ideas and things I can do for the world could have a lasting impact that goes beyond my lifetime. But even if I don't achieve the legacy of a tree, I can absolutely achieve the memorable joy of a flower, where I can try my best to have positive interactions with people and help people when they are sad or dealing with those pesky emotion things. They are things that will be forgotten, but still mean something. We shouldn't ignore the wonders of the flower or the stately tree. We should focus on both. At the end of the day, we are all just living on the planet. If you actually think about it, we always have to depend on others and on the entire biological and ecological system. We as humans don't even make our own oxygen. I'm not self-sufficient. You're not self-sufficient. Nobody's self-sufficient. And that's the end of the chapter.